Well, 2021 has certainly been a year in professional wrestling, hasn't it? What with WWE releases, AEW debuts, WWE releases, backstage heat and altercations, corporate shifts in power dynamics, WWE releases, the return of live fans to wrestling events, and of course, WWE releases. There's never been a shortage of news and noteworthy goings-on in the world of pro wrestling, but we tried to condense the year down into just the 10 biggest news bits that sum up the year as a whole. This will be less about wrestling's biggest moments, such as Hangman winning the AEW World title at Full Gear and becoming Wangman, John Cena returning at Money in the Bank, and Samoa Joe wearing a f***ing cagoule at WrestleMania 37, look at him, and more about what the biggest behind-the-scenes stories and talking points from the year were. I'm Adam from WrestleTalk, and here are the 10 biggest wrestling news stories of 2021. And speaking of wrestling news stories, if you want to be on the pulse of every single wrestling news story as it happens in 2022, make sure you subscribe to WrestleTalk. We're the best, probably. Number 10, Charlotte Flair and Nia Jax fight. Let's start this list with something a little bit funny, shall we? On the August 30th episode of Monday Night Raw, things seem to be going swimmingly in the match between Raw Women's Champion Charlotte Flair and Nia Jax, but after a few minutes in the ring, the two seemingly stopped wrestling. The two of them apparently just forgot what they were doing or couldn't be bothered to actually do a wrestle anymore and just started slapping each other a bit. There was a really awkward headlock. Charlotte tried to get the match going again by running the ropes, but Nia was just standing on the other side of the ring, not knowing or potentially caring about what Charlotte was doing next, which transitioned into an awkward half fireman's carry and a reverse guillotine, which then turned into a Russian leg sweep and this wonderful facial expression from Charlotte. So what the hell happened? Reports from the time claim there was legitimate issues between the two which flared up, pun intended, during the match, seemingly after some stiff shots and no-sells. Though apparently backstage afterwards they were fine, so the solution, of course, is to book them in a rematch for the next week. Well, I'm glad there were no lasting consequences, and that was the only time attitude problems from either of them were an issue this year. Jump cut to number 9, Charlotte Flair and Becky Lynch's fight. Ah yes, this was also a thing that happened. Following this year's WWE draft, Becky Lynch, the SmackDown Women's Champion, was drafted to Raw, and Charlotte, the Raw Women's Champion, was drafted to SmackDown. Whatever could be done to resolve this issue, have the two fight in a championship unification match, vacate the titles and hold tournaments on each show to crown new champions? No, of course not. Let's swap the titles. Seems like an easy enough segment, right? Just got to get in the ring, swap the titles they're holding and be on their way. Unfortunately, things went a little awry. Charlotte ended up dropping the title in the ring instead of handing the belt to Becky, going off script in doing so. They maintained some professionalism on screen, but after the fact, backstage, Lynch and Flair were both reportedly furious, getting to an actual shoot altercation. So the solution, of course, book them in a match at Survivor Series. I'm getting deja vu. This led into actual genuine intrigue heading into their match at Survivor Series, which of course was the second best thing on the show, the top spot being taken by Vince McMahon's egg. But the two top women in WWE getting to a shoot backstage altercation was certainly enough to make headlines for a while after the fact. A fact they leaned into for the build into Survivor Series. That's what wrestling does. They do turn real life into stuff, but it's also... Number 8, WWE contract botches. It's been a bit of a roller coaster year in the world of professional wrestling. Lots of change, the Thunderdome being finished with, a return to fans, loads of debuts, a whole bunch of stuff. But genuinely, one of the words that's been brought up the most in wrestling news in 2021 is the word contract. There's been an awful lot of contract talk this year, how long contracts have been signed for, clauses in wrestlers' contract expirations, and for this entry in this list, botches and oversights in wrestlers' contracts. In June this year, Aleister Black was released from WWE, and just over a month later, he was seen on AEW Dynamite hitting his spinning heel kick on Cody Rhodes and Arn Anderson, but that's not allowed. WWE releases have a 90-day non-compete clause. Well, actually, in Black's case, due to a botch with his contract, he still had a 30-day non-compete clause, something that hadn't been updated since he'd been called up from NXT. That's hilarious. But that wasn't the only contract botch of the year, as Adam Cole, the number one NXT guy for years, suddenly had his contract expire early in the year, which apparently took both him and WWE by surprise. They just forgot about it, and he didn't re-sign because he wasn't offered anything. Again, hilarious. Cole signed an extension so he could finish his story with Kyle O'Reilly at TakeOver 36, but man, WWE have not had a good year with their contract situations. I wonder whatever happened to Adam Cole. Number 7, all the AEW debuts. I know I've said at the start that we wouldn't be covering specific moments like debuts, but these are all so varied and interesting in different ways that combined, they make their way onto the list. There were so many AEW debuts and signings this year, and they showcased a variety of different wrestlers, and each of them interesting in a unique way. Not only were certain debuts expected from WWE releases such as Andrade El Idolo and Malachi Black, but we had some awesome surprises from other WWE releases like Bobby Fish and Ruby Soho. Then we had a whole different kind of debut, the WWE Lifers that joined from out out of nowhere, Christian Cage, Paul White, Mark Henry, guys that feasibly could have stayed on Legends contracts in WWE for the rest of time and have been quite comfortable, but decided to join AEW instead. That made a real statement and showed their intent and seriousness to be able to compete with WWE in the long run. Not to mention guys like Adam Cole, guys who legitimately love WWE, loved their time working there, loved their fellow wrestlers in the company, and still chose AEW over the big dub. We had Ring of Honor talent like Jay Lethal, an Impact crossover with Doc Gallows and Carl Anderson, one-off specials like Homicide, a freaking New Japan crossover with Minoru Suzuki, Tomohiro Ishii and Kenta, exciting future talent like Ethan Page and Lee Moriarty, confirmed signings of Thunder Rosa and Layla Hirsch. There's so much happening to change the landscape of not just AEW, but professional wrestling as a whole, that these signings, debuts, and special appearances combined can't be ignored as one of the biggest news stories of the year. Number 6, AEW botches. But it's not all been smooth sailing for AEW this year. If we look back towards the start of the year, there are a couple of shows that made headlines for the completely wrong reasons. Yes, we're talking about Revolution 2021. It is such a shame, because if it had worked as intended, it could have legitimately been one of the most emotional and impactful moments in AEW to date. Instead, Eddie Kingston sacrificed himself to try and save Jon Moxley from some sparklers. Now look, it's a shame it's so objectively hilarious because they were so close to nailing it, but just look at it. Look how funny it is. Fast forward 2 months to May, and AEW held blood and guts with a shocking climactic finish to the titular match being the Inner Circle surrendering to save Chris Jericho, who MJF was threatening to push off the massive cage to the stage on the outside. The Pinnacle get the win. Thank goodness Jericho was saved, but then he pushed him anyway. Long live the king. Oh no, what a heel. Pushed him right onto the very obvious cardboard and crash mat that the camera picked up and showcased for the world to see, completely robbing the emotional impact of the angle. Oh, so you wanted Chris Jericho to actually fall on steel, said the AEW defenders. No, it just should have been shot better, because this is a wrestling show. Number 5, CM Punk and Daniel Bryan to AEW confirmed. But hot damn, what a way to turn it around. There we were in July, minding our own business, when bam, in comes Sean Ross Sapp with a report that CM Punk is looking to make an in-ring return, with AEW being the most likely place he'd go to. And then there were teasers on AEW he'd be coming soon. AEW Rampage, the first dance, was confirmed. A stadium was booked in Chicago. Oh my god, guys, CM Punk to AEW confirmed. The absolute palpable anticipation is something that hasn't been seen in pro wrestling in quite some time. Not to be outdone though, oh my god, now there's reports Daniel Bryan, who main evented this year's WrestleMania, is also going to AEW. The return of the American Dragon, Bryan Danielson. The wrestling world could not handle this much awesome. August 2021 was a very special month for wrestling, just in general, like of all time, with SummerSlam, the debut of Rampage, CM Punk's debut, and leading into early September with All Out, where Bryan Danielson and debut. The excitement, tension, speculation, just general interest in wrestling was higher than it's been in years. This was the start of something new, and it all came from CM Punk and Daniel Bryan to AEW. Confirmed. Number 4, Triple H's cardiac event. Something much more serious now. In early September, WWE confirmed that Triple H, real name Paul Levesque, had been taken to hospital to undergo surgery following a cardiac event. This was caused by a genetic heart condition, and thankfully, Hunter made it through and is expected to make a full recovery. As of time of writing in early December, Triple H hasn't made a full return to his backstage duties yet, and is still recovering from the event that was said to be very, very serious. This was an event that shook the wrestling world, and thankfully it has had a happy outcome at the end of it. Hope to see you back at it soon, Triple H. Number 3, AEW Rampage. Heading back to August now, AEW debuted their second show, AEW Rampage. This was a 1-hour show said to be as important as AEW Dynamite, and honestly, it has been good. Has it been as important? You could make the argument that it has, with matches such as Kenny Omega versus Christian Cage for the Impact World Championship and Bryan Danielson versus Minoru Suzuki. Important moments such as CM Punk's return to wrestling and his promo battle with Eddie Kingston. But as time has gone on, it has felt distinctly more and more like a B show. Was Rampage actually a good idea in the long run, with 2 supplementary shows already posted to YouTube in the form of Dark and Dark Elevation? It airs in a poor time slot immediately following SmackDown on Friday nights, regularly features solid wrestling, but lacks a little bit in the storyline development department, so it's not out of the realms of possibility that AEW Rampage could end up being AEW's first major failure if things don't change. Number 2, NXT 2.0. Won't fail as bad as this though. Fucking hell, do I have to talk about it? In April this year, NXT officially moved onto Tuesday night, ending the Wednesday night wars with AEW. And after a few months of increased ratings following the split, WWE decided it was time for a fresh coat of paint for the black and gold brand. And quite literally, a fresh coat of many, many paints. After many reports of the new NXT undergoing changes and being more tightly run by Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard, any NXT fan's worst nightmare, fans were unsure of this new multicolored update. Fast forward to September and NXT 2.0 debuted, and it was, I'm sorry, it's not good. I'm sorry. I know it's a developmental show, whatever. Fine. But the black and gold NXTers that made the brand unmissable were made to feel largely insignificant, while the focus shifted onto new and much more inexperienced talent. It became a developmental show again, but did anyone want to watch FCW the first time around? So yeah, NXT became NXT 2.0. I think that's it for the year, right? I don't think I've missed any big news stories, right? Wait, hang on, sorry, what's that? Number 1, WWE releases. Oh yeah, all of the WWE releases. I mean, Jesus Christ. There were over 80 wrestlers who have been released by WWE this year. And combined with the mass releases from 2020, that makes over 130. Not to mention all the consolidation of corporate divisions and layoffs involved with that, where they reportedly posted record profits in the middle of an ongoing pandemic. There's not much to say about this that hasn't been said already in so many different, very depressing breaking news videos, but goodwill from fans has been completely eroded throughout the year if it hadn't been already, especially when WWE released absolute megastar talent for seemingly no reason at all. It just proves that nothing matters. Even if you have all the tools to succeed, it doesn't matter. If Vinnie Mac wakes up on the wrong side of the bed, you're done for. Or if Nick Khan decides to bump a stock price, you're gone. Your favorite wrestler could be gone tomorrow from the company with nary a mention or explanation. So why would you bother investing into anything this company does? To sum it up, like in this specific case, and honestly, for a lot of this year, WWE. Like at this point, it's not about tribes. It's not about WWE versus AEW. It's about employment stability versus not. About valuing your talent versus not. It's about decency versus not. And that's our list. What do you think was the biggest wrestling news story of the year? Probably CM Punk, right? Probably that one. But let me know in the comments anyway. Don't forget to like and share this video around if you enjoyed it. And make sure you subscribe to WrestleTalk for all the news you'll ever need in 2022. Happy New Year, everyone, and jam that jam.